the law offices of Henderson, Blackwood, and Associates carried the scent of worn leather and old money. I sat in the waiting room, eyes drifting over portraits of stern-faced partners as my stepmother, Diane, gathered her children Brandon and Chloe, whispering excited plans for their upcoming spending sprees. "First thing I'm getting is that yacht," Brandon said, scrolling on his phone, "the 60-foot one we checked out in Miami." Chloe flipped her bleached hair and added, "I'm thinking a house in the Hamptons, something elegant, maybe 8 bedrooms. Diane's perfectly manicured nails gently rested on their hands, the same nails that had been clawing at my father's fortune for the last 7 years. "Now, kids, let's not be crass. We'll talk investments after we sort out the formal stuff." From across the room, she shot me a poisonous glance. I pretended to be absorbed in my phone, pretending to check emails, while she hissed under her breath, "I don't even know why she bothered showing up." In a low voice, Diane added, "Harold made his wishes very clear before he passed." Harold. Even now, she couldn't bring herself to call him my father. The receptionist appeared. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now." We filed into the conference room, where James Blackwood sat waiting. My father's will spread before him, though he wore his professional mask. A faint glint in his eyes suggested amusement lurking beneath. "Please, take a seat," he said, motioning to the chairs. "Can I get anyone some water, coffee? This could take a while." "Let's just get it over with," Diane snapped, sliding into what she clearly thought was the seat of power. "I have a meeting with my financial advisor at 3. "Of course." Mr. Blackwood opened the folder. "First, let me offer my condolences on the passing of Harold Morrison. He was a client for over 30 years. Very sad," Diane cut in sharply. "Now, about the estate division." I tensed slightly. "Yes, let's begin with the reading of Mr. Morrison's last will and testament, dated, let me see, 5 years ago." "5 years?" I asked quietly. "Wasn't it updated more recently?" Diane's laugh was sharp and brittle. "Oh, sweetie, you really don't understand how these things work. Harold and I revised everything after our wedding. We made sure the estate stayed with the immediate family." "The immediate family?" I echoed. "Meaning?" "The people who actually cared for him in his final years," Diane said sweetly, "not the daughter who barely visited, too busy with her little nonprofit to spend time with him." I thought about all the visits she conveniently scheduled during hair appointments, the dinners she never told me about, the times she told Dad I was too busy when he asked after me. "Shall we continue?" Mr. Blackwood asked, that strange glimmer of barely suppressed amusement still in his eyes. "Please do," Diane said, a smug smile creeping onto her face. "You'll find it quite straightforward. The estate is divided between me and my children, with a small token left to charity. And Andrea here? She gets nothing." She couldn't hide her triumph any longer. 7 years of marriage, and I finally convinced Harold to see reason about his ungrateful daughter. "You're not in the will, Andrea, not a single penny." Silence settled in the room. Brandon and Chloe grinned like sharks who'd smelled blood. Diane looked like a cat who'd swallowed a canary. That's when Mr. Blackwood burst out laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a deep, genuine laugh that echoed off the mahogany walls. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "That was unprofessional. But, Mrs. Morrison, do you know what a revocable living trust is?" Diane's smile faltered. "Of course I do. It's a financial tool." "Very good," Mr. Blackwood said, still chuckling. "And do you know when Harold set up his children's trust?" "Children?" Diane snapped. "He had only one child." "Horror." "Actually, Mr. Blackwood pulled out a much thicker folder. Harold established the Morrison Family Trust 28 years ago, when Andrea was just 10. It's been growing ever since." "So," Diane's confidence wavered, "he revoked it when we updated the will?" "Did he?" Mr. Blackwood said, pulling out a document. "Because here are the trust documents, including all amendments. The last one was signed just 13 months ago." "You know what's fascinating about trusts, Mrs. Morrison?" Diane didn't answer. Her face, once radiant with smug confidence, was now several shades paler beneath her expertly applied foundation. "They operate entirely outside of a will," Mr. Blackwood continued, his tone polite, almost amused. "In this case, the Morrison Family Trust was structured to transfer all assets to Andrea either on her 38th birthday or upon Harold's death. Whichever came first." "That's not possible," Diane whispered. Mr. Blackwood turned to me. Andrea, when was your birthday? 14 months ago, I said softly. Dad threw me a small party. Diane was at a spa. Ah, yes, Mr. Blackwood nodded. The same weekend Harold visited my office. He was very deliberate about the timing, wanted the transfer to be clean and completed before any complications arose. He turned back to Diane. Ma'am, you can't undo a trust that already transferred $50 million last year. Diane's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked like someone realizing the ground beneath them had given way. 50? Brandon echoed, voice cracking. Actually, Mr. Blackwood corrected, that was the value 14 months ago. With market gains and reinvestments, the trust now stands at approximately $57 million. But the houses? Chloe shrieked. The cars? The accounts? All held by the trust, Mr. Blackwood said calmly. Which means they were legally Andrea's starting last year. You've been living in Andrea's homes, driving Andrea's cars, spending Andrea's money for over a year. I finally spoke. Dad told me to wait. He said to let it play out naturally. He wanted to see if you'd change, Diane. If you'd stop being so. I paused, then smiled slightly. Inquisitive. This is fraud, Diane snapped. We'll sue. Harold wasn't in his right mind when he did this. Actually, Mr. Blackwood pulled out a folder. Here's a comprehensive cognitive evaluation from 13 months ago. Full marks. And statements from 3 psychiatrists confirming he was of sound mind. In his own words, sharp as a tack and twice as pointed. His words, he added. Not mine. But, why? Brandon asked, baffled. Why would he do this? I looked at him with something that almost resembled sympathy. Because he saw everything. The credit cards you opened in his name, Brandon. The jewelry charged to his accounts, Chloe. And Diane. I turned to face her. The isolation, the medication mix-ups, the way you slowly cut him off from everyone who cared about him. And moving your mother into the guest house without asking? He saw it all. You can't prove any of that, Diane hissed. I don't have to, I replied. Dad already did. He hired a private investigator 2 years ago. Would you like to see the reports? Mr. Blackwood reached for another thick folder filled with documents and photos. Harold was particularly interested in your first marriage, Mrs. Morrison, he added. Tell me, how did your first husband die again? Medication mix-up, wasn't it? The silence in the room was louder than any outburst. Now, Mr. Blackwood continued crisply, let's move to the formal will. It's refreshingly brief. He opened a smaller folder and read aloud. To my beloved wife, Diane Morrison, I leave the sum of $1, the amount she has earned. To Brandon and Chloe Whitfield, I leave the same. The remainder of my estate, consisting primarily of personal items, as all major assets were transferred into trust, goes to my daughter, Andrea Morrison. He placed 3 crisp $1 bills on the table. $1? Chloe gasped. Actually, I said, reaching into my purse. I brought something for each of you. I handed over 3 sealed envelopes. Eviction notices. You have 30 days to vacate my properties. All of them. Diane shot to her feet, knocking her chair over. You can't evict me. I'm his widow. You're a tenant, I said coolly. Living rent-free in houses I now own. That includes the estate, the beach house, the cabin, and the city apartment Brandon's been using. Brandon's jaw tightened. How did you? The same way Dad knew about your gambling debts. And Chloe's shopping binges. And Diane's creative investments. You weren't as clever as you thought. Mr. Blackwood cleared his throat. There's one final item. Harold left a letter, to be read by Andrea. He passed me an envelope. I recognized the handwriting instantly. I opened it and read aloud. My dearest Andrea. If you're reading this, then our plan worked. I'm sorry for the deception, but I had to be sure about Diane and about keeping you safe. You were right to be cautious when I remarried so quickly. Your instincts have always been sharp. What you didn't know was that I was already sick. The cancer diagnosis came just weeks after the wedding. I thought Diane might be a companion in my final years, but she revealed her true self far too quickly. Thank you for trusting me. For playing the part while I transferred everything into the trust. For letting them believe they'd won. To Diane, Brandon, and Chloe, I know exactly who you are. The investigators' reports are already with the district attorney, who agreed to review them after my passing. I suggest you use your 30 days wisely. Andrea, my daughter, you are everything I ever hoped for: strong, kind, wise, and just. Take care of the fortune. But more importantly, take care of yourself. With all my love. Dad. All my love. Dad. P.S. Your mother's engagement ring is in my desk drawer, second on the left. I hid it when Diane started eyeing it. It's yours now, as she always intended. By the time I looked up, Diane had slumped back into her chair like a deflated balloon. Brandon was hunched over his phone, texting furiously, probably his bookie. Chloe was crying openly now, her mascara streaking down her face in messy black trails. Is there anything else? Diane asked Mr. Blackwood, her voice faint and broken. Just one final item, he replied, pulling out another document. A restraining order. Andrea filed it this morning. You are to have no contact with her after vacating the properties, and any attempt to contest the will or trust will trigger immediate enforcement. Diane turned her wide, stunned eyes on me. You planned this, she whispered. You and Harold, you planned it all. No, I said calmly, Dad planned it. I just followed the blueprint, much like you followed the same script you used with your first husband. Oh, did you think Dad didn't know about Charles, the life insurance, the medication? Her voice sharpened. That was never proven. No, I agreed, but it didn't need to be. Patterns speak for themselves, and you repeated every one. I stood and calmly gathered my documents. Mr. Blackwood, I said with a nod, thank you for helping my father protect what really mattered. He offered a respectful smile. It was my honor. Your father was brilliant. This was the most precise and poetic estate plan I've ever seen. I was halfway to the door when Diane called out behind me. Andrea, please, I was his wife. Doesn't that count for something? I paused, turned. It counts for exactly what you gave him, I said coldly. Lies, manipulation, greed. He saw your worth in the end. Diane, $1. Frankly, he was being generous. I wouldn't have given you that. I walked away, leaving them sitting in stunned silence, staring down at their $1 legacies. Outside, in the parking lot, I sat in my car, not part of the trust anymore, but fully, legally mine. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for over a year. My phone rang. Sharon. Dad's nurse, the only person Diane hadn't managed to get fired. How'd it go? She asked gently. Exactly how Dad said it would, I replied, down to Diane asking for proof. Sharon laughed softly. He'd be proud. He talked about you all the time, especially in those last weeks. Said you were the only one who ever wanted his company, not his money. I miss him, I admitted. I know, sweetheart, but protecting you, that's what mattered to him. The rest? That was just bonus justice. We said goodbye, and I drove to the cemetery. Fresh flowers covered Dad's grave. I'd been coming every week, though Diane told everyone I never visited. Just another lie on a long list. I knelt by the headstone and ran my fingers over his name. We did it, Dad, I whispered, just like you said. They never saw it coming. The breeze stirred the trees above me, and for a moment, I swore I heard his laugh, the one I remembered from 14 months ago, when we sat in Mr. Blackwood's office signing paperwork while Diane was off at the spa. She thinks she's clever, he had said then. But clever isn't the same as smart. You're smart, Andrea. You know the difference between taking care of someone and taking them for everything they've got. I laid a single coral rose, his favorite, from Mom's garden, at the base of the headstone, then stood and walked away. Not toward the estate Diane was surely panicking in, but to the quiet house Dad had secretly bought in my name, the one I'd been living in all along, hidden in plain sight. The one where I'd watched their game unfold and let them think I was struggling while the trust quietly grew. He was right. Clever and smart aren't the same thing. Diane was clever. But Dad and I? We were smart.